Beneath the dying sun, where sand stretched endlessly like the surface of some forgotten world, silence reigned, until a faint, broken sob cut through the stillness. She was alone. The little alien girl, no taller than a human child of 5, stood, trembling in the heart of the ruins. Her skin, a pale bluish gray, shimmered faintly under the heat of twin suns. Her hair, long and white like braided moonlight, was tangled and dusted with sand. Her feet were bare, cracked and bruised from walking, and her eyes, wide, glowing softly with fear, searched the empty horizon for something, someone, anything. She didn't know how long she had wandered. Time meant nothing here. All she remembered was the chaos, the screams, the monsters that came from below, and the way her people vanished, one by one, until she was the last. She had hidden, clutching a charm around her neck, whispering to it like it could hear her. It was the only thing left from her mother. It had stopped glowing days ago. Now, it was just her. The monsters hadn't taken her yet, but she didn't know why. Maybe they were waiting. Maybe they wanted her to break first. She fell to her knees, pressing her tiny hands into the hot sand. The weight of the sun bore down on her tears drying before they could reach her chin. She wasn't strong. She wasn't brave. She was just a child, an alien child, left behind in a world that didn't care if she survived. But somewhere beyond the dunes, someone was watching. The man moved silently, the wind stirring the dust behind his heavy boots. His dark skin gleamed with sweat, his muscles tense beneath the worn armor strapped across his chest and shoulders. Dust clung to every seam of his gear, and the sun glinted off the metal pieces on his gauntlets and backpack. He'd been tracking the strange signal for days now. At first he thought it was a beacon, some old tech left behind from the wars. But the closer he got, the more it felt different, personal. He had seen many things across the broken colonies. Ghost towns, burnt-out wreckage, places people once called home, but now whispered of death and loss. But he'd never seen something like this. A child, not human, not one of his, but alone, afraid, and crying. He didn't call out. He knew better than to make sudden moves in places like this. Trust was a rare thing, and even the smallest creature could be dangerous when cornered. He approached slowly, lowering himself onto one knee as he got close. She didn't look up at first. She was lost in whatever memories haunted her. But then she felt it, that shift in the air, that silent presence beside her. Her small fingers clenched, and she turned her head slowly. Their eyes met, hers, glowing and alien. His, dark and full of questions. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. In that instant, something unspoken passed between them. Not recognition, not understanding, but something simpler, something older. Survival. He reached out a hand, open, palm up. She stared, at it then at him. Her lip quivered, and for a moment it looked like she might run. But where would she go? The monsters were still out there, and this man, he hadn't turned away. He didn't look scared of her. He didn't look angry. He looked tired, like someone who had lost people too. So she placed her tiny hand in his. It was a small gesture, but it changed everything. His grip was warm and strong, a strange comfort in this dead place. He didn't ask questions. He didn't pull away. He just nodded once, as if to say, "You're not alone anymore." But just as they rose to leave, the wind changed. It wasn't the sound of the wind anymore. It was the low, throaty growl of something crawling beneath the sand. Something that had been watching, waiting. The man's body tensed, instinct kicking in as he scanned the shadows. The little girl clutched his hand tighter. They weren't safe yet, not by a long shot. And as the ground beneath them began to tremble, both of them knew the monsters hadn't forgotten. They were coming. And this was only the beginning. The desert was never empty for long, and neither of them, human or alien, would make it out alone. The ground shifted again beneath their feet. A low rumble, distant but coming closer, stirred the air like thunder rolling under the earth. The man tightened his grip on the girl's hand. She didn't flinch. She was used to the sound now. It had haunted her dreams since the night she lost everything. He looked down at her, then scanned the ruins around them. Half-crushed stone pillars and broken rooftops littered the area. Once a thriving outpost, now nothing but sand and echoes. The ruins stretched far in every direction, but they offered little cover. The monsters never came in the open. They moved under the surface, like shadows hunting from below. The man motioned to her. "Stay close." He didn't speak. In this place, even a whisper could bring attention. He led her to the edge of a collapsed wall and knelt behind it, pulling her gently down beside him. She crouched without protest. She was silent now, eyes wide, her little fingers wrapped tightly around his wrist. He hadn't planned to find anyone out here. This was supposed to be a supply sweep, in and out, no contact. But plans didn't mean much anymore. Not in this world. His name was Cale, a former scout from one of the old Earth colonies, long since abandoned after the wars tore through the sector. Most of his team was gone, some by monsters, some by each other. Trust was hard to come by now, and survival was a day-to-day game. He wasn't a hero. He didn't look for people to save. But something about her, this strange, fragile child, cut through his instincts. Maybe it was her silence. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, like she'd seen too much in too little time. Or maybe it was because she hadn't cried out when he came near. She had just waited. And Cale knew what that felt like, waiting for someone who never comes. The ground stilled for a moment. He took the chance to move, lifting her into his arms. She weighed next to nothing. He could feel every bone in her back, every slow breath. He moved quickly through the ruins, keeping low, ears tuned to the subtle shifts in the wind. They reached the edge of a narrow corridor between two broken structures. Kyle set her down gently and pointed to the other side, just before an old dome buried halfway in sand. It was the remains of an old bunker, possibly intact below the surface. A safe place, maybe. But before they could move again, the rumble returned. This time closer, and not just from one direction. Cale turned fast, hand moving to the knife strapped to his chest. His rifle was slung behind his back, but firing it would bring everything down on them. He pressed the girl back against the stone wall, crouching in front of her, shielding her with his body. The sand near the far column shifted, slowly at first, then suddenly burst outward as something massive erupted from below. Cale didn't get a full look, just enough to see jagged limbs, too many eyes, and a mouth lined with rows of teeth that didn't belong to anything natural. The girl gasped softly, clutching the edge of Cale's belt. The creature didn't spot them yet. It twisted, sniffing the air with an open maw, letting out a low growl that vibrated through the rocks. Cale waited. His heart pounded. The bunker was just a few meters away. If they moved too soon, it would see. If they waited too long, the thing might circle back. He watched the creature retreat slightly, burrowing halfway into the sand again, like a predator settling in to wait for prey. Cale tapped the girl's shoulder twice. Ready. She looked at him, nodded once. He counted in his head. 3, 2, 1. They moved, fast, low, and silent. Kyle kept her just ahead, guiding her with light touches. The dome came closer with every step. He could see a small hatch half buried in the sand, cracked open. A way in. Maybe. Then the sand behind them exploded. Cale didn't turn to fight. He grabbed the girl and ran, faster than he thought possible with her in his arms. The air filled, with the shriek of the creature, a sound like metal tearing through bone. He threw himself toward the dome and slammed into the hatch with his shoulder. It didn't budge. He kicked, hard. The door creaked, shifted, just enough. He shoved her inside, then dove in behind her as the monster's clawed limb struck the spot where they had been standing seconds before. Darkness swallowed them as the hatch slammed shut. Cale lay still, listening. The girl was next to him, breathing fast but quiet. He reached over, pulled her close. Above them, the monster screamed again, but it didn't follow. It couldn't fit through the opening. For now, they were safe. For now. Cale sat up, pulling a small light from his belt and flicking it on. Ito. Beam cut through the thick dust and revealed the inside of the bunker. Walls lined with old gear, crates sealed with warning labels in a language Cale hadn't seen in years. This place was from before the fall. Military stockpiles long since forgotten. But something else was here too. Faint markings on the wall. Strange symbols that glowed faintly. Same color as the charm around the girl's neck. Cale turned to her. "This was yours, wasn't it?" She looked up, her eyes glowing faintly. She said nothing, just nodded. Cale's mind raced. She wasn't just a stray child from some fallen alien outpost. She knew this place. Maybe she'd been here before, or maybe this was where she was supposed to be. He looked down at the charm around her neck. It was glowing again, faint but steady, a pulsing blue light like a heartbeat. Outside, the monster roared again, and this time, it wasn't alone. Cale's jaw clenched. They weren't just running anymore. Something bigger was happening. Something connected to her, to this place, to whatever had been left behind in the sand. He didn't know what it was yet, but he knew this. He couldn't leave her behind, not again. The bunker was cold and still, the silence inside a sharp contrast to the chaos outside. Cale moved slowly, checking corners with his light. Dust danced in the beam, and the smell of metal, rust, and time filled the air. The girl stayed close, her small fingers never leaving the edge of his coat. She wasn't shaking anymore, but Cale could tell. She was holding back something. Fear, maybe. Or memories. Both could be dangerous. He stopped at a control panel built into the wall. Most of the screen was dead, but a faint glow pulsed from one corner, same soft blue as the charm around her neck. That wasn't a coincidence. Cale stared at it for a long second, then turned to the girl. "You know what this is, don't you?" he asked, voice quiet. She didn't speak. She hadn't said a word since he found her, but she moved slowly toward the panel, placing her hand over it. The light responded immediately, growing brighter, spreading through lines in the wall like veins. A low hum filled the air, like something waking up after years of sleep. Cale took a step back. He'd seen ancient tech before. Half of it was junk. But this was alive, and somehow it was connected to her. The floor beneath them gave a soft vibration. Lights flickered on across the room, revealing more of the space. Old gear, maps etched with alien symbols, weapons he didn't recognize, and something else. A series of monitors showing grainy images of the desert outside. Movement. Lots of it. The creatures weren't wandering anymore. They were surrounding the bunker. Cale's breath caught. It wasn't random. They were hunting her, and now they'd found her again. He turned sharply, heart pounding. "Why are they after you?" Still, she didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said she knew. She'd known all along. Kyle looked back at the monitors. The creatures weren't just beasts. They moved in formation, coordinated, circling like they understood what was inside. This wasn't about food. This was about containment, or destruction. He leaned over the terminal, scanning symbols, trying to make sense of it. Most of the writing was unreadable, but he recognized one word that appeared again and again. Source, the girl. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the source of something. Cale sat down slowly, trying to think. What had the colonies been hiding out here? Why was there a human-built bunker connected to alien tech? And how had a child, this child, ended up being the center of it? He didn't get long to wonder. A loud thud echoed through the metal walls, then another. Dust fell from the ceiling. The monsters had found the main structure. They were trying to get in. Cale stood quickly and crossed to the door, checking the locks. Reinforced, thick, but not indestructible, not against what was out. "There. We need to move," he muttered. The girl looked at him, eyes wide and glowing. Then, for the first time, she spoke, barely more than a whisper. They want the power. The core. Kale froze. What core? She pointed at the center of the room, where the lines of light converged into a round platform. Something underneath. Hidden. Sealed. Kale took a step closer, the hair on his arm standing on end. He could feel it. Energy. Old and deep, maybe even dangerous. The girl spoke again, just a bit louder. My people built it to protect this world, before it was taken. They locked it away. Kale turned to her slowly. And now they want it back. She nodded. Kale exhaled hard and rubbed the back of his neck. The monsters weren't just creatures. They were tools. Weapons, maybe. Sent by something or someone who wanted control over whatever this power was. He was in deeper than he ever intended. But walking away wasn't an option now. If they got in, they wouldn't just take her. They'd take everything. Kale moved to the control panel, running his hand over the old interface. Is there a way to destroy it? The girl shook her head. If it breaks, everything falls. Of course it does, Kyle muttered. Another crash. Closer this time. A crack appeared in the ceiling. One of the creatures was directly above them. Kyle paced quickly, thinking. They needed to get out. But they couldn't just leave this power behind. Not if it meant the end of everything. His thoughts were interrupted by a high-pitched tone from one of the monitors. A new signal. Something was approaching from the north. Fast. Not a creature. A ship. Kale leaned in closer. The screen was fuzzy, but he could make out the shape. Sleek, dark, not one of theirs. But not alien either. Someone else had arrived. The girl stiffened beside him. She knew that ship. Kyle didn't ask how. He could see it on her face. Who is it? He asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, the ones who betrayed us. Kyle stared at the screen. A new player in the game, not friend, not monster. Something worse. People who knew the truth and came back to finish what they started. Kale checked his gear. Not enough ammo, barely enough water. But he had his blade, and he had her. The monsters weren't the only threat now. There was a war, brewing, one that had started long before Kale ever set foot on this planet. And somehow, the fate of it all rested in the hands of this quiet, glowing girl with secrets in her blood. Another crash shook the bunker. They were out of time. The lights in the bunker flickered, casting long, moving shadows across the cracked walls. The hum of the core grew louder now, a pulsing sound that seemed to rise with every second. Kale gritted his teeth, his body tense as he watched the screen, tracked the ship's descent. It was coming fast, far too deliberate to be a scout or a passing traveler. Whoever was in that ship knew exactly where they were going, and why. The girl stood beside him, still silent, still calm in that eerie way that made Kyle wonder what she'd already seen, and what she was prepared for. He couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been through something much larger than anything he could imagine. He didn't need her to say it. It was in her eyes, in the way she never asked questions, like she already knew how this was going to end. Another shudder ran through the floor, more powerful than the ones before. Kyle reached up and steadied, a loose piece of piping above them as dust rained down again. The monsters were getting closer, smarter too. They were testing the structure, learning its weak points. It wouldn't be long before they found a way in. Kyle checked his sidearm, though he knew it wouldn't help much. What was coming at them couldn't be fought off with bullets. Not for long. And the girl, she wasn't safe anymore. Not here. Not anywhere, really. They'll try to take it, she said quietly, eyes fixed on the glowing circle in the floor. They'll lie to you. They'll say it's for protection. But they'll use it to destroy. They always do. Kale didn't argue. He didn't need to. He'd seen what people were willing to do for power. He'd seen good men twist into something unrecognizable. He'd done things himself that haunted him still. And this, whatever this core was, it was bigger than anything he'd ever known. Outside, the sound of the ship grew louder. engines screaming as it dropped through the atmosphere. The old monitor crackled again, and for a brief moment a face flickered across the screen. Gray eyes, cold stare, clean uniform. Military. Human. The patch on his shoulder caught Kyle's attention. Command Division, Earth Union Reclaimers. Kyle's chest tightened. That program had been shut down years ago, after they lost contact with too many forward stations. He'd heard the rumors, though, that a few had survived, gone dark, operating off the books, doing whatever it took to protect Earth's interests, even if that meant wiping out entire colonies. The girl saw the man's face, too. She didn't say his name, but Kale saw the recognition in her expression. Whoever this guy was, he wasn't a stranger to her. Kale leaned closer to the screen. The feed jumped again, but the voice came through this time, distorted by static, but clear enough to understand. This is Commander Raylan of the Reclaimer Fleet. All non-authorized personnel must surrender. We are securing the core. Any resistance will be neutralized. The message looped. Kyle stepped back, jaw clenched. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't help. It was a takeover. He looked to the girl. They think they can control it? She nodded. But they don't understand. It's alive. If they force it open, it'll burn everything. Kale turned to the core. The blue light was stronger now, casting a glow across the room. He could feel it under his skin, like it was calling out, reaching for something, or warning them. Outside, a new sound joined the chaos. The monsters had stopped moving. The ground above had gone still. Kale looked back at the monitors and realized why. The ship had landed. It had scared the creatures off. Or something worse. It had tamed them. Kale felt something deep in his gut twist. We have to move. The girl didn't argue. She stepped back from the core, her hand lingering for just a moment above the light. It pulsed once, like it felt her leave. Kale led her through the side corridor of the bunker, back toward an old escape shaft. He'd seen the hatch earlier, rusted but still working. If they could get outside before the reclaimers reached the core, maybe they could warn someone, find a way to shut it all down safely, or at least keep it out of the wrong hands. But as they moved through the dark passage, footsteps echoed from above, fast, heavy, and coming closer. Kyle pulled the girl behind him, raising his weapon as light spilled down the shaft. A voice called out from above, sharp and cold. Don't move. You're trespassing on sovereign Earth property. Step away from the child. Kyle didn't flinch. She's not a threat. The soldier stepped into view, armor gleaming, rifle raised. Behind him, more shadows moved, at least a dozen. Well-armed, coordinated, not monsters this time. Men. You. Don't know what she is, the soldier said. Kale kept his hand steady. I know enough. The soldier took a step forward. She's the key. We've been looking for her since the fall. You have no idea how many lives were lost trying to track her signal. She's a child, Kyle said, voice tight. Not a weapon. The soldier's expression didn't change. You're wrong. Behind Kale, the girl grabbed his hand. Her voice was small but steady. Don't let them take me. Kale didn't move. The standoff held for a breath, then another. The woo. Tension coiled like a wire pulled too tight. From behind the soldier, another figure emerged. Commander Raylan. He looked older than the image on the screen, more worn down, but his presence was ice cold. His eyes landed on the girl, then on Kale. Stand down, Scout, he said, calm and commanding. You're outnumbered, and this isn't your fight. Kale took a step forward anyway. It is now. Raylan gave a slow nod to his men, and everything exploded into motion. Gunfire cracked through the bunker like thunder, ricocheting off the old steel walls. Kale moved before the order even left Commander Raylan's lips. He grabbed the girl, pulling her behind a rusted support beam as bullets screamed past. Dust filled the air, and light flared with every shot. The reclaimers were trained, but Kale had something they didn't, a reason to fight beyond duty. He wasn't fighting for orders. He was fighting for her. She stayed quiet, crouched low behind him, small hand wrapped in the back of his shirt. Cale fired back when he could, aiming low to disable, not kill. He didn't want to take lives, but he wouldn't let anyone take hers either. Then the core reacted. Its glow surged, blue light flooding the entire chamber like a wave. The walls trembled and the ground beneath them cracked. The gunfire stopped, just for a second, as everyone turned to look. The girl stood up. Cale tried to pull her back, but she stepped forward, eyes glowing now, not just lit, but alive, like something inside her had awakened. The soldiers shouted. Someone aimed a weapon. Cale didn't think. He stepped between her and the gun, raising both hands. "Don't," he warned. "She's not your enemy." But the light only grew stronger. The core answered her presence, rising from the floor slowly, as if pulled by invisible hands. Symbols lit up across its surface, glowing with the same energy that pulsed through her. Commander Raylan stepped forward, stunned for the first time. "You activated it." The girl looked straight at him. "You tried to destroy my family, my world. You didn't understand then. You still don't." Kyle stood beside her now, breath tight in his chest. "What happens next?" he asked quietly. She looked up at him. "It's choosing." The core spun faster. Wind roared through the bunker, carrying the scent of sand and ash. Outside, the monsters shrieked again, only this time it wasn't rage, it was fear. They were running. Cale turned to the commander, who stared at the core like a man facing his own judgment. "You can't control it," Cale said. "You never could." The girl raised her hand and the core responded, slowing, then stabilizing. Its light dimmed just slightly, as if it was waiting. She turned to Cale. "I can't stay." His heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "It's not just a machine," she said softly. "It's part of me. If I don't go with it, it'll fall into the wrong hands again. It'll hurt more people." Kyle shook his head. "There has to be another way." She smiled gently, her first real smile. "You saved me when no one else would. You gave me time when everyone else saw a threat." He wanted to argue, wanted to beg her to stay, but deep down he knew. This wasn't a goodbye he could stop. She wasn't meant to be hidden. She was meant to be free. Commander Raylan took a shaky step forward. "If you leave with it, the power will be lost. Earth will lose its chance to rebuild." She turned to him, calm and clear. "It was never your power to take." And then she stepped into the circle of light. The core lifted her, gentle and weightless. Light wrapped around her like a cocoon, and for a brief second, Kyle saw her as more than just a child. She was something ancient, something that had survived pain no one else could carry. The light flared once more, brighter than before, and then she was gone. The core vanished with her, drawn into a shimmer of light that collapsed inward until nothing remained. The silence afterward was absolute. The Reclaimer soldiers lowered their weapons slowly, confused and dazed. Raylan stood frozen, his plans shattered in an instant. Kyle looked at the empty space where the girl had stood. The weight of it hit him all at once. He walked out of the bunker alone. Days passed, then weeks. The desert calmed, the monsters vanished. Whatever power had awakened beneath the sands was no longer there. The land itself seemed quieter, like it had been holding its breath for years and could finally rest. News spread across scattered colonies, rumors of a scout who stopped a Reclaimer fleet, of a girl made of starlight, of a weapon that chose peace instead of war. No one could prove it, no footage survived, but the stories grew. Cale never returned to the bunker. He wandered for a while, helping those he could, sharing what little he had. People called him a hero. He didn't feel like one. Not after what he'd seen, not after what he'd lost, but sometimes, on the quiet nights, he'd look up at the stars, and there, in the endless black, he'd see a flicker of blue light dancing across the sky. Faint, but steady, and he'd know she was still out there. The girl left behind nothing but memory. No weapons, no war. Just the choice she made, to protect instead of destroy. Cale carried that choice with him every day. In a world where monsters still waited in the dark, where power tempted even the best of people, her story mattered. Because in the end, she wasn't a weapon. She wasn't a source. She was a reminder that even in the most broken corners of the universe, hope could survive.